Part 4. The exploration of my own psychic powers. For months after our session, Brian's prediction haunted me. At that time, he continued to explain that not everyone was able to raise their vibration to a level that would allow for direct communication with those in spirit. Fortunately for you, James, you would be able to make such an adjustment. I was fascinated by Brian's contact with the spirit world and curious about his assessment of my ability to do the same thing. The curiosity from my childhood charged to the forefront. Why me? What had I done to qualify for this? In my heart, I knew that this was to be my future life, and all my experiences were preparing me for this turn of events. However, my head could not reconcile such an outlandish prospect. After all, it was not exactly the life I had planned. What about my writing career? Isn't that the reason I am in Los Angeles? Could there be another plan for me? I decided to evaluate my psychic abilities and see for myself. I bought every book I could find having to do James Van Praagh 34 with psychic or mediumistic development. Many of the books describe different techniques for enhancing the natural psychic ability we all have. Some of the techniques described were as follows. I had to hold an object, close my eyes, and see what feelings came up about the object. These feelings could be in the form of pictures, sounds, names, or emotions. Another technique was to hold a picture of one person or several people and write on a piece of paper any thoughts about the people in the picture, such as their ages, their likes and dislikes, whether they were happy, sad, tense, worried about something, and the like. One of the exercises involved an entire group of people. One person had to sit in a chair facing away from the group. Another person would stand about 2 feet behind the person in the chair. Then the person in the chair was to describe everything he or she felt about the person standing. Was it a male or female energy? What were the person's outstanding features? Describe the person's clothes. Did the person wear glasses? All of these exercises were designed to help me use my feelings instead of my head to sense the world around me. I was soon incorporating several of the exercises into my everyday life. For instance, on the way to the office, I would try to guess which elevator would arrive first. Or I, talking to Heaven 35, would try to intuitively see the colors of my co-workers' clothes for that day. The more often I used my intuition, the more often my guesses were correct. On several occasions, I found these exercises quite useful and fun at the same time. I remember arranging a meeting in the conference room where I worked and trying to guess how many people would attend. My first impression was the number 24. So without asking anyone, I set up 24 chairs and 24 glasses of water. By now, many of my co-workers knew about my psychic games, so they were not at all surprised to see the room prearranged. After the room was in order, the group started to promenade through the door. One by one they sat down until the total reached 22. I thought, how could I be off by 2? My co-worker, Jody, looked at me and winked, as if to say better luck next time. Needless to say, I bowed my head in disappointment. 5 minutes into the meeting, the supervisor announced the hiring of a new employee. The door opened and there stood Mr. Ryan and his secretary Carmen. They sat in the remaining 2 chairs. I looked over at Jody and winked back, I told you so. As I became more confident with the intuition I had developed, I began to read people. This was my way of tuning into them on an emotional level. James Van Praagh 36. First guess you could call it a gut reaction. It worked the same way as the exercise with the pictures. I attempted to feel what was going on inside a person. Was she a good person? Was she hiding something? Was he happy or sad? What were her desires in life? What motivated him? I registered my feelings and then looked at the physical person to see if what I picked up intuitively matched him or her physically. At first, it took some time to figure out what questions to ask myself. But after a while, it seemed to take just seconds to read someone. Once again, I found that the more often I followed my first instinct, the more often I was right. I had to learn not to be afraid to ask myself, was the feeling I received colored by my own bias or judgment? Was it my very first feeling, or had I thought about it too much? It quickly became clear to me that learning to trust my hunches and to follow my initial instinct was valuable regardless of my reasons for doing it or where the road of life led me. Within a year of beginning my intuitive exercise program, my sensitivity had increased dramatically. People at work started to call me at home to ask questions about the future. Most of the questions concerned relationships, and those vibrations were the easiest to read. At least I could immediately feel if there was something wrong. I began to get mental images of the faces of the people under talking to Heaven 37 discussion. I could describe the color of their hair and eyes, their jawline, sometimes right down to a birthmark. Almost every time I described the physical characteristics of the significant other over the phone, I was inevitably correct. I could also tell the type of emotional involvement the two shared. For instance, I once read for a woman named Paula over the phone. When she asked me about her boyfriend, Michael, I immediately tuned into her on an emotional vibration and felt her as being alone. It is much easier to do this on the phone because the physical appearance doesn't get in the way of feelings. I told her that I felt she was emotionally alone and that she desperately desired to have a balanced and normal relationship with Michael, but he was not emotionally available to her. She answered, yes. I further said that he was not only emotionally distant but often not physically around. When one is in a relationship with another person, each partner's energy stays with the other. If a couple does not spend a lot of physical time together, the energy around the other person dissipates significantly. On another occasion, a young woman called Cindy asked me what I thought about her fiancé. I felt Cindy's energy over the phone and asked for the name of her fiancé. I tuned into his name Alon James Van Praagh 38 side of her energy and felt a total imbalance. I told her that I didn't think he was a good choice. I suggested she put the marriage off for a little while. She said, "You are totally wrong," and that was the end of that. 2 years later, a friend happened to remind me of my phone conversation with Cindy. She told me that Cindy did indeed marry the young man 3 months later. The marriage lasted 5 months, and the couple just recently filed for divorce. I don't want you to get the impression that I'm never wrong. Of course I am. I just want to explain that for me the easiest way to read someone is through the emotions. The emotions are the rawest of energies, and whether they realize it or not, most people wear their hearts on their sleeves. As time went by, the more I used my intuitive feelings, the stronger they became, and the more I learned to trust them. Soon, friends, then friends of friends, called to ask questions about their lives. It never occurred to me to ask for money from any of them because I was still learning. Besides, I was getting a high just having my impressions verified. It was during this period of self-imposed intuitive development that Brian's prediction of spirit communication revealed itself. I was speaking to a young lady on the telephone about her problem. Talking to Heaven 39 suddenly, I had an overwhelming desire to ask her if she knew a Helen. Yes, she replied. Helen is my grandmother. She died a while ago. I continued, she is giving me a thought of Idaho. The girl said, yes, that's where she lived. Your grandmother is telling me that she used to do needlepoint and had made some cushions for her couch. She says she was insistent that her footstool stay in the right place all the time. She also says that she loves to look at the beautiful rose pattern on the footstool. Helen wants you to know that she has made a similar one in heaven. There was a long silence on the other end of the phone. The girl was shocked, but she verified that everything I relayed to her was true. I hung up the phone and immediately took 2 aspirin. I could not believe it was actually happening. Brian's prediction had come true. I had actually talked to spirits. Even with all my studying and all of the verification, I was not prepared for that moment. A whole new world of incredible feeling and understanding had opened to me. The possibilities were thrilling, the responsibilities enormous. I learned that when I raised my vibration to reach into the other side, the connection infused me with incredible sensations of freedom, love, James Van Praagh 40 and joy. It was that same sense of God that filled me as a young boy. Keeping up the vibration exhausted me, but the rewards were well worth it. The difficulty came when the session was over and I had to relate once again to a three-dimensional, physical world. I would have to practice a new balancing act to stay sane. The requests for readings began to pour in. I never solicited clients, they all came by word of mouth. Soon, the requests were so overwhelming that I knew I had to make a choice. Should I stay with my new job in the contracts department at Paramount Studios, or should I practice the gift I had been given on a full-time basis? Actually, it was never a choice. So many of my experiences had led me to that moment. I simply had to have the courage and self-confidence to take the next step. And so I did. In the past decade I have had the great fortune to speak to thousands of people through individual readings, group meetings, international symposiums, and more recently on radio and television. The experiences, some of which you will read about in this book, have been extremely gratifying, intensely emotional, and overwhelmingly positive. I have learned to let go of my ego desires, and allow my life to flow in whatever direction it takes me. It has certainly been an exciting adventure. And I can't wait to see what's next. Talking to Heaven 41. What I believe since the experience of the hand when I was 8, and the years in Catholic schools, I have been on a spiritual quest. On my journey, I have often been asked if I believe in the existence of God, or heaven and hell. Based on my spiritual communication work and the hundreds of books I have read, I have come to the following conclusions. First of all, I do believe in God. In fact, I believe we are all God. What does that mean? Well, I believe that we are all made in the likeness of God. I am speaking not of our human qualities but of our spiritual qualities. Although we appear differently on the outside, we are the same inside. When we become aware of the spiritual person, we begin to see the God light within that person, and with this wisdom we begin to realize that we are all one and the same. We are all made of the God spark. Even the lowest creature crawling on the ground is made from the same God spark. Even those who appear evil and bad are made of the same God spark. The beings who are evil are perhaps the furthest from that which is God. God is perfection in everything. God is creativity in all things. Each one of us is perfect if we would only seek our divinity. However, the majority of us get caught up in the ego, James Van Praagh 42 self, or the human part of ourselves, so that we rarely come close to the truth of who we are. Where does God reside? My answer is, within you. Within the very core of you. God is your essence. God is life itself. I don't believe that God is a figure in space looking down on us. And while there have been many who have represented the great light of God in human form, the same God spark that was in them is in each one of us. God is my light, your light, and everyone else has the same light too. The difference may be in the degree. Some lights are brighter than others, and some lights are very dim. Secondly, I believe in heaven. I personally believe that heaven is the other side of our physical world and is very much like our physical world with similar sights and sounds, although more vivid and more colorful. Heaven is a place where we can stroll in a garden, or ride a bicycle, or row a boat. As a matter of fact, we can do anything in heaven that we want as long as we have earned it. However, many of us have been filled with the idea of a Christian heaven. I have often asked myself, where do the Muslims or the Jews go when they die? Certainly not to a Christian heaven. Suffice to say, each religion has a heaven and hell based on their particular beliefs. I believe there are many levels to heaven, and we talking to Heaven 43 go to that level we have created by our thoughts, words, and deeds while on earth. Those of us who have grown to the same spiritual level will reside with one another in the same heaven. Beings who are more spiritually aware reside on a higher level, and less evolved souls are on a lower level. We can never go to a higher level until we earn it. However, those beings on a higher level can go to a lower sphere, and in many cases, they do just that in order to aid and assist those souls who are not as aware. So where do bad or evil people go? They go to the heaven, or the hell, that they have created based upon their words, thoughts, and deeds while on earth. They, too, exist with other beings who are on their level of spiritual evolvement. In this book, I hope to clarify these beliefs so that your questions about
Soulmate, this is a part of Zindagi Ki Roshni consultancy. It has been established for those who have lost someone and for those who are very sad in their life. About 100 PDF books and 20 short audio books of this topic will be sent to those who join it. This data will be sent to their email or WhatsApp. If you want to join this organization, then please send WhatsApp message to this number.